Good evening, members and officers. My name is Councillor Harvey Cohen. I'd like to welcome colleagues and officers to tonight's meeting. I'm chairing tonight's meeting to manage business as efficiently as possible. I will invite people to speak one at a time to ensure their contributions are properly heard. Therefore, please do not speak unless invited to do so by me, and thank you in advance for your assistance. Agenda item 1, membership. There are no changes at all to our membership. Agenda item 2, communication apologies. I've received apologies from Councillor Mia Hanley and Councillor Alex Clarkson, and Councillor Richard Butler is running late. So that's yeah, we're fine. Councillor Nick Oakley will be here at 8 o'clock for her presentation. So we've now changed the agenda around. Welcome to Emily Dillon and Councillor Alan Matthews for agenda's items 6 and 7. And as I said, for item 8, we've got Councillor Nick Oakley and Liz Baton, who was here a minute ago. Hilary Shade has given her apologies. However, with Liz Baton and Emily Dillon here, we've got a senior leadership team who are a great presence at our meeting, so hopefully they'll be able to field any questions we have at the senior level. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare? None. Thank you very much. Agenda item 4, the minutes which were sent of the 26th of January and are on the website, are they approved as a correct record? Thank you very much. They're agreed. So agenda item 5, as you know, members, we've now moved this from the end of the meeting to the beginning, so we are hopefully not wishing the end of the meeting quickly and to get through this item. This is the item now, Forward Planning Programme and Committee Work Programme, which is on page 10 and 11 of our papers with the forward plan. So we now want to ask to see what we've seen. We've got Cabinet members on the 4th of June 2026, Councillor Chris Myers, Street Scene, Parks, Leisure and Culture. The 7th of July, Councillor Paul Richards, Environmental Sustainability, Net Zero and Public Health. So we also want to think about any questions in advance. That's what the idea is, so we can be a bit fresher. We can think about the way we want to steer discussions with them, especially we're now 3/4 of the way into the term. We're coming towards the end of a 4-year term. The manifesto and the administration's wishes should be on their way. So we need to think about questions we want to ask as part of that. And also we want to look at the forward plan to see what's coming up. If you look at page 13, we can see coming to Cabinet is Electric Vehicle Car Club. We've got Vision Performance Report, Q3, Corporate Safeguarding Policy, Cabinet and Council, which I think is quite important. And then we've got the local plan update, but everything else seems to be out of the remit of calling into scrutiny. There doesn't seem any major things at the moment, items that has come to my mind. Do any members have any items they think? We do know at the next council meeting, there is going to be an agenda item, a motion on fly tipping. And I think that was something we had discussed as a future task and finish group. So I propose that the next meeting we most probably will put that on the agenda to look into to see if that's something we still would like to go forward. Welcome, Councillor Butler. Thank you very much. If you look at our work programme, which is on page 19, it seems quite busy. We've managed to got most things up to Monday, March the 2027's meeting, but we need to just think of 1 or 2 tasks and finish. We've got the 3rd one being reported tonight on our agenda. As I said, fly tipping might be something which is very important. If there's any other items, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just having an idea that it might be nice for us to kind of have a look at SIL again, maybe in a smaller way, where I know they've implemented their new SIL policies and the way that's working, but I know we'd encounter some problems with how they engage with ward councillors with bids and how that communication happens. So I think maybe it might be working the new policy for groups, but how we have that engagement with councillors and ward members.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea, and it's pretty important considering, but we would need to probably have that quite early on, because there may be, as we all know, a moratorium on spending. I'm not sure if that moratorium, Liz isn't here. I know the moratorium will be on council spending, future council spending. I wonder if it will be on SIL. We don't know yet. If it is, that would be a bit redundant. So we can bring that up on the 4th of June's meeting, which is our next meeting. I think that would be a good idea. Should we ask for a report from George Pavey on so can you just clarify, because the points you made were very good, which points to ask? We'll just write these down, the points that Councillor Solomon's made. Oh, sorry, I've made you, yeah.
So I think the new procedure was about how it was easier for groups, that they had the schedule set out more kind of, it was 4 times a year. But at the moment, ward councillors aren't seeing those bids. So I think maybe there's some work that we can do once those bids go in, and how they're looked at and how they're supported and how they're understood, and that kind of initial governance and due diligence.
Are members happy for us to bring that onto the agenda? And do they have any points that we would like to ask, once again, Liz Baton and her team to report on that? I think also I would like to look into part of the process, how officers write the reports and what due diligence is done. But we tried to do that last time and we didn't get to the nitty-gritty. We might want to do a task and finish, but the problem we're going to have, I think, as a policy review committee going forwards, we'll know in July, but we could be at the end of our scheme, the last year, where we are there's not a lot we could change, and we'd have to just see what happens in July. But I think now, going forward at the moment, for our June meeting to bring that in, but then we'll have to think about the role of the policy review committee going forward, because we won't be able to implement any great changes. It may just be reporting and thinking, and I'm sure the administration are thinking that as well. Thank you very much, Councillor Sullivan. Any other members want to bring anything up on? Now's your chance, because we have got a meeting on the 7th of July and we haven't got a lot of work in it. That's why bringing this still to the 4th of June, we might then want to do a further work on the 7th of July. No. Okay. So we're now going to move over to agenda item 6, portfolio updates from Councillor Alan Matthews, Cabinet Member for Housing and Housing Development, together with Emily Dinnan. Thank you very much. Councillor Matthews, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harvey. We found in writing this that this presentation kept on expanding, so I think I probably need to try and rush through it, which won't be easy, but no doubt I'll get kicked at an appropriate time. Okay, it covers recent trends, and I'll just make it a very quick update on latest information, achievements, ongoing and new priorities, which very much mirror the revised Hertsmere Vision and Corporate Plan, which you've already seen and went to full council, and then looks at some of the more immediate priorities and talks about what we're going to do with communication as well. So, the first slide, very detailed, and you saw something similar a year ago, so I won't dwell on this too much, but it simply shows that casual vacancies, people leaving or dying, are our biggest source of vacancies. There's very little new build, and most of that has been affordable housing. So new build social housing has been running at about 10 homes a year, apart from 24-25 when we had the Clarion Windsor Close scheme handed over. But it just demonstrates that the biggest problem we have is actually increasing delivery of social housing. But there are no quick wins. Recent trends on housing demand.
Can I just ask you to go back to that slide just for 1 second, if you don't mind? Can you just clarify then, for 25-26, there's been no new housing supply, no new affordable housing supply? Because that's not the information we've been given. Or am I reading your table wrong?
I'll check with the officer. We'll come back on that, I think. It'll be easier. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the affordable rent, do you want me to just clarify the affordable rent was 14?
Don't you much well answer that?
14, just 14 social rents.
Yes, yeah, so it's broken down into social rent and affordable rent. Bear in mind these are only the lets, so the developments might have come through, but it will be the lets on the housing register, so they might not have got to that stage yet. So it's saying that there's 14 affordable rent.
Okay. Right. This table, again, you've seen it before, and this is this goes in groups of 3, these columns. So it's a starting point. It's then the new applications over the course of the year, and then it shows you how many are left at the end of the year, and it's all split by bedroom category, with smaller homes at the bottom, and the light blue at the top is 4-bedroom homes. So what this is showing in looking at the start of year figures is that there's an upward trend. Overall, so it went from 645 in April 24 to 708 last year, and is currently at around 700. But it also demonstrates that although the number of 4-bedroom homes required is relatively small, the number of 4-bedroom homes which are coming through is much, much smaller. So there's a real imbalance between supply and demand, particularly for 4-bedroom accommodation, but equally for 3-bedroom accommodation. Okay, the next trend shows homelessness. As you know, homelessness has doubled from 2019-20 to last year. This year we're projecting an outturn of 1,600 applications, so just very slightly under last year's figure. But it is still coming through at a high level.
Sorry, thank you, Councillor Cohen, Mr. Chairman. Matthew, is this only on Hertsmere's homelessness, people coming into Herts, and this isn't including Clarion or any other housing associations?
It's when I'm talking about applications, I'm talking about applications to us, and when I'm talking about, but also in the supply side, we've got Clarion lettings. So
the reason why I asked about the applications to us is that I'm conscious of the fact that these numbers are quite small, actually, when I consider the people out there who might be on the housing wait list with other housing associations, or is their numbers duplicated?
Well, you're talking about homelessness figures now?
Yes.
I think 1,600 a year is actually a very big figure to manage. And if you look at the supply of permanent homes, the supply is dwarfed by the scale of need. So I wouldn't say it's a very small figure at all. It's a very big figure.
No, I'd say it's small in comparison. Whereas if you're adding Clarion onto this, you're not hearing what I'm saying. If you add Clarion onto this, people going for housing for Clarion and the other housing associations, that would probably triple, I would have thought.
Well, most of Clarion's vacancies come to us. 75%, I think, with Clarion? Yeah, 75%. So they get counted in these figures.
So these aren't accurate figures then that we're looking at?
Accurate? Yeah.
They're not.
Okay, perhaps I'm missing the point.
So if I can clarify.
Emily, if you could just give a bit of clarity, because I know
So we are the homelessness authority. So resident wouldn't apply to Clarion as homeless. So all homelessness applications would come to us. That's different from the housing register. So there may be some duplication with our housing register and someone being on, for example, Clarion's transfer list. But the homelessness would be reflective and accurate of Hertsmere's homelessness. Of course, that only counts for those that have approached us and that we are aware of. So there may be a larger number that haven't approached us for assistance. Does that answer?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
But
Thank
these
you.
These are new numbers, not from the existing ones rolled over. These are new. Those are new cases.
Yeah, the homeless applications are all new cases. Yeah, and as Emily has said, we're the authority who has the statutory duty to assess those applications. I'm not sure people would necessarily apply to Clarion if they were homeless, but who knows? They probably tried both.
I'm obviously very thick, sorry, because I don't understand. So 1,650 to 24, 25 homelessness. They've got no home at all. And only 114 are in temporary accommodation. So where are they? Where are these people, where are they living? Do you mean they're not on a permanent list, they're in temporary accommodation? Well, they're not. So where are these people?
Okay, their applications of homelessness, I think within 28 days. Yeah.
It will be all homelessness applications.
Okay, so it's all homelessness applications. We are very successful in preventing homelessness where we can. You know, so if it's a tenancy situation and we can resolve the problem, then that person, you know, can be stopped from becoming homeless. But we also help people to find alternative accommodation, and so we can help them find accommodation in the private sector. So that doesn't count as a homeless acceptance, it counts as a prevention. You know, and it's certainly not the case that every homeless applicant will move into temporary accommodation, because if we need to house, then they can be housed direct without going into TA.
But I was just slightly confused about the term. So these are the applications for people who think they're going to become homeless, is it? Because we then find them accommodation. What is this showing? I'm sorry, I am not getting this at all. Because if someone's homeless, I would expect them not to have a place to go to tonight.
No, the definition of homelessness is far wider than that, and it should include a threat of homelessness, which doesn't necessarily get carried out, but there's then a legal process that the council has to go through in deciding whether someone is classed as being, firstly, if they're homeless, if they're in priority need, if they are intentionally homeless, in which case there may be no permanent duty, and if they may have a connection with another authority and with insufficient connection with Hertsmere. So there's a whole process which is gone through.
How many are actually homeless in Hertsmere?
Well, all I can say is that, the number of people who are homeless with a need that we've accepted are the people who are in temporary accommodation. But this is only it's probably confusing because it's taking a snapshot of the numbers in temporary accommodation, which is the red column, a snapshot at any one time, and the blue line is actually how many people have approached the council saying, I'm going to be homeless. So there's quite a difference in the figures. And
what you're explaining is that you do a lot of those people, those thousands of people who are individuals who say they're going to be homeless, most of them you manage to find a way to make sure they're not homeless. Because in the end, we only have, not only it's not good, but we have 114 or 110 in temporary accommodation, and they would be the homeless ones.
Well, indeed, but you know, I should say there's some fantastic work being done on the front line to actually prevent people becoming homeless, and that where people are admitted to temporary accommodation, there's also a fairly fast flow through of that temporary accommodation. If we can find permanent accommodation for those people. So, but it is apples and pears. You can't compare one directly with the other, but the one does feed into the other figure.
For us as an authority and of the concern, I understand the great work that's being done to prevent it, and I think that shows it. So should our trend be, the one we should be looking at is the red? Because we're managing to sort those figures of homelessness applications, but it's the red ones who are in the end not finding a place, haven't got a permanent home. That's why they're in temporary accommodation.
Well, I think it's important to look at both figures, because that is the blue line is the level of expressed need over the course of the year. Okay, that is the volume of work which workers in the house department are dealing with and trying to help those people and trying to prevent them becoming homeless with a reasonable amount of success. But so the number in TA, I mean, we want to reduce it to the lowest possible level. We try and avoid bed and breakfast at all costs, but sometimes we can't avoid it. You know, sometimes people will have to be placed in other areas because of violence and things like that. But both figures are relevant in assessing what homelessness is, what action we're taking, and the scale of the problem.
I've seen Councillor Sussman, Councillor Sussman, Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Allen.
Hi, sorry, thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Matthews, sorry, I know you are at the beginning of this presentation, but I do have just 3 questions that have arisen, or 2 questions and a comment. On this homelessness, sorry, you said that we're aiming for that TA figure, the red column, to be as low as possible. Yeah? I'm pleased to see that we left it as an administration at its lowest ever in 2023, and now, unfortunately, it has sort of risen somewhat. On the... In fact, no, though, that negates one of my questions. Going back 2 slides to the one about recent trends in housing supply, and I don't expect you and Emily to have an answer to this now, but I really would like you to come back to me on this, please, or come back to us. How many houses that are due to be built on the granted applications, so everything that's gone through planning permission with the social housing? It'd be really good to understand what is due to come through, and how, therefore, we're going to be topping these up, because obviously we've got Lyndhurst coming through, which should make a real difference to this. And, I'm so proud to support that in Shenley, because that can make a real difference. So if you could come back to us, because I don't expect you'll have that now, on that, and how many have actually put a spade in the ground at this stage as well, because it's all very well if they're granted, but if they're not building, then, to be honest, we're not going to see the benefit of them for a long time. Thank you.
Yeah, we can do that, but you're absolutely right. The important thing is the spade in the ground, because there's a lot of difference between a planning application being granted and actually work starting. So yes, it's an important figure. So happy to let you have that.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I'll help try and clarify, because I think I was catching on quite well with where you were going, and I can see why other members were confused, because it's good to see that whole total trend, because just because someone's doing a homelessness approach doesn't mean, they need to have that safeguard to be able to notify to council, because they may not be able to find a private option or whatever else. And then you've got people that are in temporary accommodation, but then I can see on the next slide, it talks about how many rough sleepers that we have in the borough. So those are people who have, they're on the streets and they've got nowhere to go that night. What was my question? So looking at those trends, and I think you might go on to talk about it later, with the Renters Reform Bill, I think by having those figures, you'll be able to see if those approaches really increase, and whether or not, I think that'll be the real test on whether or not we've got capacity to be able to support people into an accommodation type, either by themselves, private rental, or through our support. And have you got mitigations for that at the moment?
I'm getting a problem here in as much as I'm getting bombarded with questions and making very slow progress through what is quite a long presentation. In terms of reasons for homelessness, obviously there's a concern that there could be an increase in the private rented sector with the Renters' Rights Act coming in. We're not feeling that to any great extent at the moment. I mean, the bigger issue in terms of the private rented sector is that rents are going up and housing benefit levels, are not moving to keep pace with it. So it's costing us more to subsidise those placements. So that's a bigger issue. But in terms of reasons for homelessness across the board, there hasn't been a major change in the reasons why people are becoming homeless. The main reason is exclusion by friends or relatives, often people who've never had their own home, and the friend or relative gets fed up with them living there and perhaps having children. Private sector evictions are about 25%, but there's the chance of an upturn. And domestic breakdown is about 8%, and then another 8% with domestic breakdown with abuse, so violent situations. So that is the main cause of homelessness. But those figures are those percentages are relatively static. Okay, trying to work out where I was. Can I carry on?
I know Councillor Allen's got a question. So we'll do
Very
this
quick.
Yeah, and then I think we'll do two slides and then ask for questions.
You're very generous.
Your hopes of making rapid progress have not really worked out that well so far. But my question is very quick. On the debate about the bar chart, it seems to me that another way of telling that story is that although the blue number, which is the blue number goes up, the red number is broadly the same. And does that suggest that the processes and the work that officers do to sort out these cases is working pretty well?
Thank you. It is working well. The level of prevention is just extremely good, and you know I'm amazed at how officers have coped with the increase in demand and avoided major use of temporary accommodation. So, but you know that is the indicator. And in fact, replying to Councillor Sussman, I think the difference between there being 100 families in TA and going down to 74, it's an indication of what's happening on the day, how quickly we can find accommodation, the number of people coming through the door. You know, all these things are the factors in that. But you know, it doesn't stop the case that the level of homelessness has doubled since 1920. It's effectively we're hanging on by our fingers to actually respond to the demand coming through the door. So, there's good days and bad days, I suppose, in terms of good years and bad years in terms of how well we cope. But there's not too much importance. If TA started to grow, if the red line started to grow exponentially, that is where the problem comes up. Because the more it rises, the closer we are to having to use bed and breakfast on a large scale, which is very expensive. The government statutory requirement for authorities that use bed and breakfast is that it can only be a maximum of 6 weeks. So, you can't have people, you don't want people languishing in bed and breakfast for long periods of time. You can't afford paying for those families to be languishing in bed and breakfast for long periods of time. But statutorily, you're not allowed to do it anyway. So that, if we lose control, then bed and breakfast is the place we have to go to. So that's always the danger. But yeah, there's some great work being done to actually keep the figures to the level that they're at, despite the increase in demand. Okay, right, I'm going to try and continue. So this shows, if we haven't done it already, recent use of temporary accommodation over the past 12 months. So you can see the figures fairly static. But I know people are interested in how many households are being placed outside the borough, because we do try and place in the borough always. So, it's running, between 20 and 30, over the last year. In some of these cases, they're deliberately placed outside the borough because that's where they want to be, because they're trying to escape violence. So, it's not necessarily a bad thing they're outside the borough, but apart from that, there's very quick turnaround. So where we place outside the borough, our intention under the TA strategy, which we put to committee, I think, in 24, there's a ranking order as to how we get people back into more appropriate temporary accommodation. So we'll do that as quickly as we can. So that use of out of borough is very temporary. And in fact, I should say, although it's not there as a separate bar chart, the number of cases in B&B at any one time is probably no more than 3. So that aspect is very well controlled. Okay, I take a deep breath and move on to the next slide. With rough sleepers, I won't go through every line, but the figures are very low. The no second night out policy operates throughout the year. But despite the best efforts of our outreach workers, there's always a small minority who just refuse to engage with us. We had the severe weather emergency protocol came into place at the beginning of January, I think. So because of the freezing conditions, and we use that as an opportunity to try and get out there and actually pull people in, just to get them off the street and to give them a taste of what it's like to, have a bed for the night. So we use that as best we can to bring people into the frame. It doesn't always work. Some people will go back out again as soon as the freezing weather has passed by. But we can only do what we can. Right. I take another deep breath and move on to recent achievements. So I have to say I'm very pleased that we've got the allocation policy through, as we did in January. Just to remind you, it's about a better framework to address severe overcrowding, also to address under-occupation, giving extra priority for potential homelessness, improving access to age-restricted accommodation, and reviewing financial eligibility. So a lot of work has been taking place on putting that into effect. The another piece of good news I'm particularly pleased about is with Peabody. Peabody are our second largest association. They've got 1,500 homes in the borough. We rely on their vacancies, which normally number about 50 a year. And when we noticed them suddenly going down, we tried to find out what was happening, and we found that they were selling property they thought was not viable to maintain. So the leader and I and Emily met with their chief executive, and as a result of that, they've kind of gone back on that, and we've now got different disposal criteria which are in place, which we're monitoring to make sure they work in our favour. But we're reasonably confident that we will massively reduce the number of properties being sold. I mean, at the end of the day, one has to accept that some properties are not going to be cost effective to do huge amounts of work on, but we expect them to be very minimal. And I believe that we're actually close to getting to that point, and we're looking very closely at how this trial is working. Okay, we'll move on. So, ongoing priorities. Obviously, we've got the downsizing project, and we're identifying families. We've identified 17. They've all been contacted. We're looking at the potential to make direct offers to those people, although it will be a problem that 10 of them need adapted accommodation, so it's a problem in terms of the availability of that accommodation or stuff that can be adapted for those people. We're part of we work with the National Fraud Database, and like any other service, we're vulnerable to fraud, so systems are in place to cross-match data, and that has the potential to free up social housing. So I'm sure there's a few every year where they're being knocked out of social housing because they didn't actually qualify for it in the first place. Okay. Ongoing priorities. Well, empty homes clearly are a wasted resource. We need to encourage them back into use. We need to warn people of increasing tax levies if properties are empty for a long time. And the figures at last count were 1,094, which compares to 1,364 at its peak. In fact, the most changeable figure amongst empty homes is the ones which have been empty for less than 12 months. So, obviously, any empty home has got to empty the system, and we hope it actually moves to a kind of conclusion within its first 12 months. If it doesn't, there is then the tax penalty, the council tax penalty which they will incur. But I'm thinking that the recent increase in the under 12 months, I think means there's a difficult property market. so that properties taking longer to sell at the moment. Perhaps landlords are deciding what to do with the vacancies. So I think that's been a factor, but we want to keep that figure moving in a downward direction. Our civil enforcement officers are now conducting visits to empty homes, help us identify and ensure actions being taken. I'm sure I've mentioned before that it's on my doorstep in Bushy Heath that the Ministry of Defence have got what's known as RAF properties. I think there's a state of about 300, and at the last count 69 were empty, and I think most of those have been empty for at least 5 years, which is very difficult to accept, when it could actually deal with, all of our 4-bedroom need overnight. Anyway, we've been trying to escalate this. We recently wrote to the Minister for Housing and the Minister for Defence to tell them that we thought that was a real problem and they had to attack it. And we've, in fact, in the past few days, we've had a letter back from the Defence Infrastructure Organisation, so part of the MOD, who tell us there's a lot of stuff happening and they need to look at repairs. Now, frankly, I read it and I didn't accept what they were saying. But I think in the light of what's going on in the Middle East, there is a possibility that that reserve of accommodation, which they've been holding on to for so long, may need to be used for people who are having to return. So I'll take the heat off this at the moment, but we'll be escalating. And we've only had a reply from the Minister for Defence. But I'll take the heat off that for the moment, but we will go back to the Minister for Housing if we find that property still isn't being used. We've also got the opportunity now, it's if you didn't know, it's the National Empty Homes Week starting on the 9th, and we'll use that to put out some publicity to help identify empty homes and promote awareness of the council tax levels and also of the available schemes to get those properties back into use. So we'll grab hold of that opportunity. And there'll be stuff going out in the next few days on that. Okay, and I guess the critical thing here is promotion of social and affordable homes. We need more social homes, and we are doing everything we can to increase that supply. So Emily and I are involved in discussions with a number of players, housing associations, planners, developers, and we're trying to maximise the development of affordable but particularly social housing, and also particularly larger homes. All too easy for developers to actually, produce a scheme of all 1-beds. I've got to listen to this. Or 2 beds, because they get more bums for their buck. But we actually need those larger homes because we can allow people to flow through from 2 beds into 3 beds into 4 beds. So anyway, that's happening. I have to say, in terms of asset management, I think Andrew Don is doing a great job in identifying council-owned sites and look at opportunities to develop on those sites and other sites that he's involved in looking at as well. And you see that we've maximised our access to LAF, Local Authority Housing Fund, and in fact have delivered, probably over 2 or 3 years, I think 42 homes through that scheme, which was, it's a scheme which the Conservative government put forward to help primarily resettlement of families from Afghanistan and Ukraine. But what we've been able to do is to use that more and more for local families. So about half of those units have now been used for local families. Okay, our other priorities, and there's many more of them. Inflammable cladding is a problem. There's a couple of schemes causing concern, and I won't share the addresses with you because it'd be wrong to do that. But we're working with central government to make sure that remedial work happens quickly. I have to say it's been disappointing that the government are proposing deadlines, but they're quite long-term deadlines for remediation. So the quickest deadline is for properties 18 metres in height and taller by the end of 2029, which I think is quite a long way away if you're living in a flat which isn't safe. I'm sure there are measures in place to make it safe, but it's not satisfactory. But until those deadlines are introduced, and whatever deadlines they do decide to introduce, we haven't got any power to make this happen. We can try and use persuasion. Where we have been active is where managing companies have increased service charges to huge levels because of the cost of going around the blocks in the night time to make sure there is no smoke. And in fact, we've succeeded in getting some service charges decreased in the meantime. But anyway, it's something that we're watching very closely, and we're putting what pressure we can onto developers to actually take the responsibility, which is their responsibility in any case. Okay, which I guess brings me neatly on to fire safety in HMOs. So this was approved on the 14th of January by Cabinet, but it's a service level agreement between Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue Services and all local authorities in Hertfordshire. And it's changed to reflect new legislation, particularly in relation to high-rise property, and to ensure there's strong partnership working and everyone understands their role in the process. So that's now in place. Review of amenity standards will be very familiar to Councillor Cohen. As reported to Cabinet in January, we've accepted a number of recommendations from the HMO Task and Finish Group, probably most of them, but not quite all, in relation to bathrooms, bin storage, waste segregation, inspections, outside lighting and signage. So we'll be reporting to Cabinet again prior to consultation with landlords and other interested parties. And I know of a few interested parties in this, so we'll make sure they're included. Okay, in terms of new priorities, and again, this is a lot to swallow, I think. So I'll try and cover this quickly. But we need to prepare for the changes in the Renters' Right Act, which come into effect on the 1st of May, so just around the corner. So abolition of Section 21, which are the no-fault evictions, fixed-term tenancies to allow tenants to give 2 months' notice. But I know there's arguments about this, but frankly, I don't think it's a problem. Unless you're a rogue landlord, they can still get possession for valid reasons. And and the government, and I think, have succeeded in being fair to both landlord and tenant in that. There's new responsibilities for landlords not to discriminate against prospective tenants because they have children or pets or in receipt of benefits, and also to end bidding wars. There's a process of fairer rent rises, which are limited to once a year, and tenants can challenge what they consider to be an unfair hike in their rent. But there are increasing enforcement powers which come to the local authority in terms of investigating, acquiring evidence, and being able to apply quite heavy civil penalties if landlords aren't playing ball. So there's quite a lot of work coming out of this. Continuing this, on the next slide, local authorities are required to establish a private rented sector database for all rented accommodation, and we have the power to take enforcement action if landlords fail to join the database. We have the decent home standards, although AWAB's law is not coming into effect in the private sector until 2035, some way off, but there'll be other issues where we do need to take action. There's a new expectation under legislation that the council will take formal action if landlords breach the tenancy action, and will be required to report on enforcement activity. And the government will establish a new private rented sector landlord ombudsman to resolve complaints. So some of that won't be coming to us. The next slide is looking at the implications of the Supported Housing Regulatory Oversight Act. That's effective from March next year and will affect schemes for the homeless, young people, people with mental health problems, substance abuse, learning difficulties, problems of that kind. So they're introducing a national supported housing standard. There'll be licensing requirement, so housing providers will be required to obtain a licence from the council, demonstrating that they can meet the new standards. We will have enforcement powers to make sure these standards are complied with, and we're required to have a supporting housing strategy in place by March 27. So just in terms of supported housing, this is a new and quite big area of work that we need to prepare for. And action is now starting to take place. Okay, and on the next slide, this looks at really implications for the, need to get the name right, Housing Enforcement and Licensing Team. So the current policy under which they operate was approved in March 2018. I've been through the list of all the changes, all the additional requirements we have to follow. So there's a lot of work to do, and we've got to decide how we use those enforcement powers. So the new policy will be updated to reflect the changes in legislation, and we would like to bring it back to you in June. We'll be required to have a public consultation with that, but the government recommends that there's a formal process to adopt the policy. In anticipation of that, and also to an extent of the additional demands from HMOs, and some of those exist outside of Potters Bar as well. We've changed the name of the private sector team, Housing Enforcement and Licensing, and we've put additional 2 staff in that area to meet growing demand. Okay, and almost my last slide. I've flagged up communication as being a separate issue because there's a lot happening here. And we need to ensure that we promote an understanding of all those opportunities and requirements of people in housing need and the various partners, including the private sector, who are part of that. So I just think that, and I know it's something that I think has been picked up previously by policy review, and I know it's mentioned in the availability task and finish group, but I agree, it's an issue, and it's one thing having a policy, but if you don't communicate those policies and the reason behind them and actually kind of get the publicity right, then we're not going to achieve the objectives. So I'm just flagging up in this as being an issue that we need to address. Okay, well, you can't have any questions left, surely, because you've asked them all already.
Right, so Councillor Rani, then Councillor Green, Councillor Sussman, Councillor Butler, Councillor Allen, Councillor Sullivan, then me.
Thank you for the update. It's really encouraging to see the work on downsizing the empty houses, as increasing supply is always difficult in Hertsmere. So I just want to ask whether there are any additional steps we can take to encourage more empty homes to come back into the use?
Sorry, I think the question is, are there any more initiatives we could follow to bring empty homes back into use?
Yes.
Well, we welcome ideas on this. I mean, I think we're doing just about everything which is included in the recommendations from the Empty Homes group. But again, it's sometimes difficult to actually evaluate, how successful the responses are. I guess one of the most crucial factors with empty homes is that people have to pay quite a big penalty. So it's 100% extra. Sorry, let me just find it. Is it after 12 months? I think so. Yeah, it's doubled after 12 months. It's tripled effectively after 5 years, and it's quadrupled after 10 years. So there's kind of an escalating penalty, which you think would be enough to drive people to actually do something with the empty properties. But and it's always a problem in terms of our resources, how much time we can spend in getting out. But there are schemes available to offer grants to people to help, or grants or loans in fact. So we need to see if we can push that a little bit harder. But it's difficult to think of what we can do that we're not already doing, really. But, we are, looking at what other authorities are doing, and if there's any ideas we can pinch. But it's not very obvious at the moment that, we're doing quite a lot of stuff already.
Thank you very much. You talked about interacting with Peabody to try and reduce the chances of them selling off property. Have you also had discussions with Clarion and other social housing providers? Because whilst we may not have heard of them doing it, they must be in a similar position.
Yeah, we've had similar discussions with Clarion. In fact, you may know, but we've been jumping up and down recently. There's one of their properties has recently been sold, and so we're investigating to find out exactly how that has happened. We do expect to be consulted before they take, accepting that there will be kind of hopefully very unusual situations where it's not cost effective to retain the property. But we want to know about it, and so we're looking to see exactly what happened in that case, and we'll use that one case to reinforce an existing message that we expect this to be very unusual, and we expect to be asked in advance whether we agree to it.
Yes, I think that's really important, because we don't necessarily want to buy the home ourselves and do it up, but I think every social housing provider should have to go back to the council first and offer it to them. If we don't want it, or we can't afford it, or it's not worth fixing, that's one thing, but the fact that they don't have to come to us. So if you reiterate that would be very nice. Thank you.
The problem is these companies are companies now. They make profits out of homes and housing within our areas. Councillor Sussman next.
Thank you very much. That was a really comprehensive report. Thank you very much for that. Just two things. The first is I would back you up, Councillor Matthews, what you said to Liz. I think that we should be incentivising developers to provide the larger homes, and if that sort of means that if we have to count it up by bedrooms to get to that 50%, it should be proportioned on the number of bedrooms they're building for the private sector, because I'd rather have 35 or 40% social homes and it still and I know that we might not be able to make that decision, but that it ticks the box for the special, conditions to get them the planning. Not that we want to be building on Greenbelt at all, but we're at least getting the right homes that we need. So if there's any jiggery pokery that could be done on that to help supply those homes that we need, that would be great. And this question, Shenwood Court is amazing. Crown Road, what's the occupancy level been on that? Do we know? And then I'll come back.
I don't have the specific data on Eventry Court, but it's usually full. Sorry, can you hear me? It's usually full. The only time it wouldn't be full is when we're waiting for the property to be ready to let.
Okay, thank you. And I think that it is fair to say, given all the aggravation we had for it, that that's actually been a very successful project. And actually it's a shame if we've got small sites that we aren't utilising those for what is quite quick to erect accommodation, as we need it now more than ever. And I do think that this should be something that should be explored in this current sort of housing crisis.
I'm taking my space. Oi, hello. Two questions. One is on the identifying downsizing. So you've identified 17 properties. How are you identifying those properties to get people to downsize? Are they being asked to voluntarily downsize, or are there incentives? What type of incentives? I just want a bit more detail on that, because obviously I'm in favour of that. If you've got one person rattling around in a 4-bed house and we need it, if we can try to help facilitate that move, great, but I want to know how you do that. And two, on the temporary accommodation, I appreciate you've gone up in these columns and they're, you know, over years. In future, can we have a bit more detail in terms of how long those people been in temporary accommodation? So, you know, whether you've got 5 males, 6 females, and they've been stuck in temporary accommodation for 6 years, 4 years, 3 years, because these numbers are static from 24, you know, I appreciate what Natalie said, Councillor Sussman said earlier about from 22, 23 at 74, but how many of those people have still been in those temporary accommodation? And I'd like a bit more detail in that, because ultimately when you're creating policy to help improve these figures, that's where we are, to try and help come up with ideas as well to help the administration to resolve those problems. So I'd like to know that. And thirdly, just to say thank you to the housing team. I know you've got a stressful job, I'd hate to do it. So can you pass that back from all of us as councillors? Thank you for what you do.
Yeah, 2 questions. You mentioned the expanded workload with the new responsibilities under the Renters' Rights Act. Could you just expand a bit more on how the resources are being shuffled around? Because if there are more officers in that team, that is a resource taken away from somewhere else. So just clarify that, please. And secondly, and something we've discussed before, also in the Task and Finish group, about the things that we need to raise the profile of through comms and communications and PR about particular housing strands and services. This council's role in housing is not very well known. I imagine that a lot of residents have actually no idea that it is one of the biggest and most important things that Hertsmere does. Could we put some thought into raising the profile overall of the work this authority does in housing?
I agree, and that should be maybe part of Hertsmere News, maybe an update or a page about it, because we don't read about it in Hertsmere News, and I think that's quite important.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, in terms of our publicity strategy, then I think you're right. We need to actually make the point about what we're doing, and also get a better understanding as to you know, the reality of the situation. You know, a lot of people come through and they say, I want to live in this particular area, and don't quite understand that we might get one vacancy every 5 years in that area, and they're 10th on the list anyway, you know. So you know, people have got to, you know, we want people to make informed decisions about where they want to live, because it's, you know, we have a bidding process, you know, where people can bid for where they want to live, and the people who are in the highest position on the band, who've waited the longest in the band, are the people that actually get it. But to an extent, you know, there's, you know, as we, and I've said to people occasionally, you know, what you're asking for doesn't exist. And if you're not prepared to compromise, effectively, you're denying yourself the chance of being housed at all. You know, so there are those sorts of messages to get across. But yeah, you know, I think people have got to understand housing's a big operation, and you know, it affects people's lives. Sorry, I just kind of answers more of those points. I think we're kind of, it's probably better to answer the task and finish question about availability when we get to that next item on the agenda. And Emily can explain the process for identifying suitable property for people. So that's fine. The comment about graphs and bar charts, well, I'm amazed. I thought we'd blinded you with sufficient science and bar charts and graphs. But if you want more, we'll do that. Oh. Yeah. Well, I was going to say that Emily could answer that, on the next item on the agenda. But you can answer now. Fine.
So those 17 households have already registered on our housing register. Yes. So they've already expressed an interest. They are those that are downsizing from 3 and 4 bedroom properties, which are our highest need. So what we did was proactively contact them to say, is there anything that could kind of support you to move? What type of property are you looking for? What areas? And then we could look to potentially direct offer them a property to free up that large home. So that's just kind of one strand of downsizing. Very much appreciating that's quite a small cohort because they're already individuals or households that have expressed some kind of interest in moving. But those are the ones that are known to us now. So we thought well worth contacting and providing that additional support to.
Great, thank you very much. And finally, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. Yeah, so my question's around the landlord database as well, because I know, for Podspa and Boreham Wood, when we've been talking about HMO so much, actually having a database of landlords and making sure that they are hitting these, things that they have to do, gas safety, fire safety, all those things that they need to have. And it's a huge undertaking. It's an absolute unenviable job. So my question is, even with the extra, capacity that we've put in, do we think that will be enough? And also, how are we going to advertise this to landlords? Because these are people that aren't currently on a database. And we've got, a lot of people who are renting or might not realise that they have to do this. And having a read through on the government website, do we have a draft, I don't even know if it's called a policy or guidance in place, because there will be a registration fee attached to this. Do we know how much that's going to be? And also what the fines are, because it's they've put kind of guidelines on what would happen if they didn't register or if they did break the rules.
Okay, well, there is already a database or HMO licences, so we have that already, but we now need to expand that for any rented accommodation, effectively. So we are part of the way there. Sorry, what was the other point?
So do we have guidelines on how much the registration fee is going to be? Do we know how much the penalties will be if they're non-compliant? How are we going to advertise this out? Because there will be people that are just renting a room, or they may have a very small HMO or shared accommodation. They might not know that this is coming into force quite soon, because I think doesn't the Renters Reform Act kick in 1st of May, but the database is kicking in slightly later in the year. And there must be statutory deadlines or mandatory deadlines that they have to meet to make sure before they get fined. And how do we know if they're not telling us, if they're not on a database already?
Sorry, I think in terms of us developing the enforcement policy, we know that there's some fairly hefty fines that we can apply, but that's why we need the policy. So we need to work at that level of detail. So that's still to come.
It'll come before our committee as well, won't it, the policy, so we'll have more information then. Right. Councillor Ann, did you want to say one last thing?
Just very quickly on the comms point. What I mean, just for example, the fact that the number of people sleeping rough in Hertsmere is fewer than 10, and they are responded to so quickly and effectively, I think would surprise many people who would assume a much larger number than that. That's a story worth telling, as is the fact that out of, 75,000 people, only about 100 are in temporary accommodation. I think that would also surprise people, and stories like that might help people, might make people more aware of the scale of work that is done. But my other question was about the resources, the shuffling around to expand the team for the enforcement.
Okay, we're not shuffling people around. There is extra resources coming in 2 or 3 areas in the housing department, and certainly 2 additional staff coming into the enforcement team. So whether that's enough is another question. But we're not shuffling people around. We're talking about new posts and some temporary posts being made permanent. So I think we're talking a total of 5 or 6 staff here. So it is largely an injection of new people.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Can I just echo the comments of Councillor Richard Butler, and thank you to you, Councillor Matthews, and Emily, and your team in strategic housing and housing services for a great presentation. We always enjoy having you come to our committee, Councillor Matthews, and it's been very, very interesting, as you can see from the number of questions. So thank you very much. So members, we're now going to move on to item 7, task and finish group reports, housing availability and methods to maximise occupancy. Councillor Natalie Sussman, the lead member of the group, will give us a short summary. Thank you.
Thank you. This is only 2 pages, so bear with me. Good evening, Chair and members. I will start off by saying, actually, this doesn't address empty homes, but I would be very happy to work on something, another task and finish group, with other members to look at that, should that be required. What this report does is it sets out the findings of a cross-party task and finish group, which we established to explore how we can improve the availability of housing in Hertsmere and by addressing the under-occupation in social housing. We began this work in response to clear evidence that while many families are waiting for larger homes, a number of 3 and 4 bedroom properties are currently under-occupied. As of August 2025, 45 properties were under-occupied to some extent. At the same time, over 250 households each month were registered as needing 3 or 4 bedroom homes. This match presents both a challenge and an opportunity. Our aim has been to explore how we can sensitively and positively encourage what we prefer to call right-sizing rather than downsizing. This term right-sizing better reflects the goal, matching households with homes that best suit their current needs. We identified several barriers that prevent people from moving. These include the financial cost of removals and decorating, the stress of organising a move, concerns about losing community ties, and emotional attachment to long-term homes. We also recognise that family members can play a key role in influencing decisions. We examined pilot schemes, including one run locally by Clarion Housing, which showed that there is genuine interest in right-sizing when support is offered. However, we concluded that while financial incentives can help, practical assistance and clear communication are likely to be more effective and sustainable. As a result, we make 5 key recommendations. First, we recommend developing a clear and proactive communication strategy to raise awareness of right-sizing options, including engagement with tenants and, more importantly, where we have consent to do so, their families. Second, we recommend producing a formal right-sizing policy to ensure clear standards, proper monitoring and well-prepared homes for those who move. Third, we encourage housing associations to offer a managed move approach, providing hands-on support with removals, utilities, tradespeople and adaptations where required, so that the process feels supportive rather than daunting. Fourth, we recommend dedicating officer resource, equivalent to half a full-time post, to promote right-sizing, coordinate with housing associations and ensure sustained focus and accountability. Finally, we recommend stronger engagement with neighbouring authorities to improve and promote mutual exchange and swap schemes, which can be a low-cost and effective solution. In conclusion, right-sizing represents an opportunity to make better use of our existing housing stock, relieve pressure on families waiting for larger homes, and support residents into properties that better meet their needs. With the right communication, policy framework, and practical support, we believe meaningful progress can be achieved. Finally, I would like to thank Councillors Amron and Allen for their input, for Councillor Matthews for all the information as well that he was to give us. The officers involved, including Alex Moore, who was super patient with me, Emily Dillon and Maggie Benson. So thank you very much to everyone for listening, and I hope you agree that this is a good way forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sussman, and thank you. I want to reiterate thank you to Councillor Amron and Councillor Allen and all the team for all their help. The report is great, very detailed as well, very detailed. I can see how much work you've done in it. I've got a couple of questions. I see that at the end the policy is in the final stages of drafting. Is it planned to come to policy review if it's accepted by, if you're drafting it, I presume it's been accepted that we're going to have that. Will we be able to see the policies, the two policies that you're writing? And members got any questions? So the next stage will be, it will go to Cabinet on Wednesday. Yeah. It's going to go to April Cabinet, and then they will have 8 weeks or 12 weeks to deliberate. Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, having read this, and I hadn't heard the term right size, and I think if that was in communication, I think it really does kind of show what it's about, and it's not just kind of making people move from somewhere that, you know, that they're really attached to, that may have been a family home that they'd, you know, raise their children in, and actually that it's right sizing, and it can be so beneficial to people to be in suitable housing for them, maybe if they're aging as well, or to future-proof their needs. So actually, I think that term, when I read that, I had a completely kind of different slant on it, even myself. So I think that'll be really key in the communications.
Okay, great. So members happy? Have you got any comments, Councillor Matthews or Emily? Thank you.
I'd just thank Councillor Sussman and members of the Task and Finish group for the work they put into it. I know that you've approached this with a personal commitment to actually make it happen and to cut through some of the red tape to actually provide a human solution. So we will go through the recommendations and look at them very seriously. Thank you.
So thank you for your presence this evening. If you want to go, please go. Certainly, we're now going to go to our final item, and I want to welcome once again Councillor Oakley, the Cabinet's member for Planning and Infrastructure and Transport, to our meeting, and we've got assisted by Liz Baton, as we said at the beginning. So we're going to see the presentation which members hopefully have received in their supplementary pack. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm hoping that members have had the opportunity to actually look at the presentation, so I don't intend to kind of read it out verbatim. You'll be very pleased to hear, but I will make comments on some of the slides as we go through. I'm assuming Alex is... Oh, you are, Liz. Thank you very much. So, Emily, yes, next slide, please. Obviously, we've had some changes in the last year. Liz has been with us not quite a year, but has certainly driven through a number of changes in that time. I think one of the most important things that she's done recently is to set up a separate majors team to deal with the increasing number of substantial planning applications that we have in order to drive those forward. There are other little tweaks that have been going on within the department, and I think that's going to help with the efficiency and the way that things are actually dealt with. This really is a little bit about what they do in development. I think it's fair to say that the team comes under increasing pressure with the number of planning applications that we have, but we'll come on to the statistics shortly, but I'm very pleased about how well they are coping given the pressures. And particularly, I think, when we look at what's been happening at Planning Committee in recent months, and it's very important that we support our planning officers as much as we possibly can in terms of their work. Now, obviously, within development management, it also includes a lot of paperwork, I suppose I would describe it as, through the processing of applications, to the validations, and also within development management we have enforcement, which is always quite high profile. Now, on the development management stats, you will notice that actually we haven't got any for the last municipal year. The reason for that is that in terms of the available stats, we're actually only 3/4 of the way through the year, and it was actually suggested to me that if I actually provided you with a figure for this, it would actually rather skew the figures. But I can reassure you that our actual determination figures are looking very, very good, and I'm happily provide you with an update as soon as we've got them for the final quarter. I think everybody probably knows about the process of development management, but I've included it here. It's actually really quite important that the process engages with ward members at a really early stage, particularly with the large speculative developments that we've got at the moment. So that is happening. I think probably it's hard to understand that major developments actually include everything that's 10 and over, but I think our focus is, and in terms of the applications coming in, are effectively applications which are considerably larger than that. So not much change in terms of the validations team, but one of the things that we're continuing to explore is the use of AI in the validation process. Now, the plan is to start off with the little applications, if you like, certainly not the majors, and I'm hoping that that's going to be coming on stream. Liz and the team are working with IT to come up with a way that we can actually deal with it. Now, that I think will help enormously in processing the applications as they come in, and free up some of the administrative staff for some of the other really important jobs that they have to deal with. One of them being consultations, and we've actually made some tweaks to consultations. One of the things that we have done to facilitate lengthy submissions from residents, and in particular some of the amenity and residential groups that we have in the borough, is to actually up the word count on the planning portal, because some of the groups said to us that 5,000 words just wasn't long enough when they wanted to do a detailed response to an application. So that has now gone up to 10,000. And we are looking at other ways in which we can submit, or rather have residents submit consultations to avoid the very, very lengthy process time it takes when dealing with emails and letters. So that's work in progress, but we hope to be able to report back on that. Public inquiries, major appeals, these are the ones that we've had in the last year. Some of them have been extremely controversial. Most of them have been allowed. There was one big enforcement appeal in South Mims, which was dismissed, and residents were very, very pleased to hear about that, because it was a particularly controversial one. The two important ones for the moment are Shenley Hill. That public inquiry took place recently, and we're waiting for the decision on that. And the other really big one is the PB3, or south of Potter's Bar, and that goes to public inquiry very shortly. And there will be a Rule 6 part to that, with, I think it's 5 or 6 local amenity and residence groups taking part in that one. So that's quite a big one for us to be defending. Key applications, these are the ones that effectively have yet to be determined. There are a couple on there that have recently come through, but have not commenced in terms of actual construction. We'll actually see that there are some very, very substantial ones on there. We're also, since I've actually done that slide, we are expecting an application in for Home Farm in Radlett, which has been described as a garden suburb. Interestingly, compared to Hampstead Garden Suburb, I think we might possibly find that one a little difficult. So that is just going out to public consultation. It might also be worth actually mentioning Bushy Golf and Country Club, because a planning application will be coming in for that in the summer, albeit being done as a joint venture between this authority and developers. So I'm happy to take questions on any of these, but obviously mindful of the fact that they are live applications. Chair, I don't know whether you want me to answer questions now, or you want to...
I see the next section is enforcement, so I think we should do that now on the planning section. Councillor Sussman, and then myself, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Oakley. Just on what you've mentioned, the efficiency of the team, and I appreciate all the pressures they're under, but even today I got an email from someone where they've been in engagement and had an application in for over a year, and they were promised about 5 months ago that they'd have a response. This was after they'd chased after a year or so, and it seems like we're getting lots of these. So my question is, how can you address the efficiency? That's one point. Another point on AI is, do you see a point where AI could actually determine any of our applications? And my third question is, why do you not mention Bowman's Cross on that last slide of key applications? And then I've got another question, but I'll come back to that later on. Thank you.
Sorry. If we take the issue of efficiency, planning applications, there's a great deal of work that has to be done on them. And in order to actually push them through speedily, it does require the applicants to respond in a timely fashion. It's very rare for an application to come in and for everything to be absolutely fine for it to go to committee. So if you've got a specific issue from an applicant, if you'd like to forward it to me, I will take a look at it.
Thanks, Councillor Oakley. sorry to butt in so early, but that answer just absolutely goes no way to answer it, because I think that Liz will be aware of a few of these, one of them today. These are applications that have been in where they've had no communication from our officers, and it's not that they're not communicating the other way. They are chasing, and it actually, I think you've misunderstood. There's at least 3 instances, and I'll happily send you the details of them, where if you read back the history, you know, one of them, they paid over £10,000 for this, and they're like about 8-9 months on with no communication. So I think it's best that I send you, and I can see Liz nodding, and I think she knows which ones these are. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Sussman, if there are any issues with developers, they usually contact me direct, so I'm surprised that things have been ongoing for such a long time and they haven't been in contact with me. So that would be my immediate response to that, because
I've put them in touch with Sajida.
Well, then it wouldn't be a surprise that I didn't know about it, would it?
I don't think that she's making a point about you not knowing about it. It's just about the team generally. I think that's what it is.
I'm always
and the
happy
efficiency.
to assist whatever the planning aspect is. So, you know, most people, if they need to deal with a problem, or they perceive they've got a problem, they will come to me. So that would be the first port of call. AI, do we think they are going to, or it's going to be used for determining planning applications? It may assist at some point, but we are not looking at that. We are looking at the validation process. Bowman's Cross, that application's not in. So that's why it's not on the list.
Councillor Rani, thank you. I think I missed Councillor Allen. It's Councillor Allen then.
Sorry to go off topic, but as we're here, you put Shenley Granges in that list. Haven't we already determined that one, or is it coming back in a different form?
Yeah, it's been determined, but it hasn't started. Which is one reason I think it's on there.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Oakley, for the presentation. I just wanted to ask, like, as we have housing pressure on our borough, so how we are working on planning process with developers so that we can deliver more affordable and social houses?
Yeah, and great question. And that's in light of the presentations we've had before and the question about how do we make sure we're getting from developers the affordable social housing that we need, the size, etc. And what extra force can you give to make sure we do get that, especially considering what we've heard in the presentation?
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of things there. Obviously, there is a requirement under the Golden Rules for 50% affordable social housing. We have, in the last couple of years, been in a position to get one particular local developer to produce schemes which have included 70% affordable social and 100% affordable social. That doesn't happen very often, but if we can take that opportunity to get it, to secure it, we will do. In terms of the tenure mix, then that is something that is negotiated with Emily and her team. And so we recognise the fact that the biggest demand is for 3-bedroom properties, and so they will determine what that split is. And then obviously where the affordable social is concerned, it's a discussion to have with the registered provider.
I think this follows on a little bit from Councillor Sussman. You showed us the team, in your second slide, I think it was. Who is responsible to being the manager of the development management team? because they're the ones who are processing and doing all the planning applications. Who is now managing that team?
Well, effectively, it's our head of planning now to have a direct control over it. But there are we've also got another officer that we brought in last year who takes a lot of the management of the teams. We have a team leader for majors, and there will be team leaders for what's now known as the minors team.
Can I ask that maybe we get an email and get told who these are, the names and the emails, because I used to, as you know, who I used to write to. I used to get answers sometimes, but I think for members, they need to have a manager that they can write to if they've got concerns about certain applications or they hear of it. So it would be good to keep us informed, please.
I think there is one particular manager who would deal with that sort of thing, but I don't want to speak to speak over Liz on that. But
I can circulate a list. We are just literally finalising it because we've got a new starter in the middle of March. So I want to make sure that is up to date with those right contact details.
Just one other question. You mentioned about member engagement on pre-apps, and I think that is vital. What does it mean by member engagement on pre-apps? Is that just an email to us saying the application's gone in? Because the reason I'm asking is we've had now for the first time in Elstree, quite 2 or 3 majors. I've never been invited to a pre-app specifically from the council. It's only been from the developer saying we've got a public consultation, come along to a member talk 3 hours before. So it's not a pre-app. I've not been invited to any pre-apps at all.
Normally there would be, it seems to be a bit random, but you would normally expect to get an email to say the pre-app is in, and that if you'd like a briefing from the officer, it's available. If there seemed to be anything falling through the net, we can check on that. But you've got to remember that not all applicants submit a pre-app. So whilst you might actually see an application coming in and it's of a size that you think that ought to have been a pre-app and may well not have been. I think there's just an assumption that all big applications have pre-apps when in fact they don't. I'm thinking of one that is probably going to come in next week, where it's a full application, not an outline one, and there was no pre-app. And you might be quite interested in it.
Sorry, just one quick point. I've just looked back at a couple of the applications that we mentioned, and you have been copied in, certainly, to one of those issues where they've still heard nothing.
They would have heard from me because I respond to all emails. Okay, enforcement. I think one of the key things really to mention with enforcement is the length of time it takes. There's not an instant remedy. The only time where we might see a bit of an instant result is if it's something really, really serious and the team have to issue a stop notice. But a lot of these things can, roll on for quite a while. Do I find that frustrating? Yes, I do. Unfortunately, we have to kind of work with the legislation and the process. And in another life, enforcement was even longer. And I think also there are some people that know the enforcement process as well as we do and exactly how to get round it, which is a little sad to say the least. But officers do their very best. They engage in negotiation if they think that's how it can be best resolved, and a lot of cases are closed on that basis without having to go through the full enforcement process. But some cases do go on; they are appealed, and we have to wait for due process. Right, that takes me on to the other half of the planning department, and that relates to planning policy. So it's fair to say that the majority of my time has been spent on the local plan, although we have had other things that we have to deal with, like the Statement of Community Involvement, SIL, and when we have time, conservation areas. So we have actually now got the submission from Elstree and Borehamwood Town Council for their neighbourhood plan, and so we are obviously going to be spending some time going through that. But aside from that, it is full on with the local plan, but I can come on to that in a bit more detail. So, as you all know, we had to revisit our draft local plan, and the good news is that we will be going out to Reg 18 in April. I'm hesitating there because obviously we can't go out to our Reg 18 consultation until full council actually approves it. So I don't want to get ahead of myself there, but assuming that full council do agree that it can go ahead, we literally open for public consultation the day after. So a lot of that information is going to be coming out in the next few weeks. And if we go to the next slide, I've updated the local plan process that we've got here so that you can see where we are now. I suppose the really big thing that has happened in the last year was the procurement of all the evidence bases. We basically have had 25 evidence bases, anything from the Greenbelt report to gypsy and traveller sites to retail evidence bases and a whole range of other things. Those are now coming through. We've got a couple of people here who are on the members planning panel, so you will have seen those reports as they have come through. So the next stage is the Reg 18 consultation, but as part of that and leading up to that, we've also had the town visions. So for the last 3 or 4 months, public consultations have been ongoing to find out how residents would like their town centres shaped between kind of now and 2040. Now, that goes out to public consultation in 2 weeks' time, and all of that will feed into the local plan. Now, you'll know that essentially it's a regeneration strategy, and that is why consulting with residents over town centres is so important. We want to redevelop as much brownfield as we possibly can in order to save our green belt in terms of achieving our housing targets. So the next slide just gives you the timetable up until the end of the year. I popped the town vision consultations in there. The comms for that will be going out any day, and so we've got one for Bushy, Borehamwood, Potters Bar and Radlett, and you'll be able to see exactly what residents have said. You'll be able to see some of the suggestions from the consultants working on the vision. So the regulation 18 consultation, 6 weeks from the middle of April. That takes it through to the end of May. We are doing a large number of different channels of communication in order to reach all of our residents. But clearly one of the most important things is the face-to-face engagements, running in a very similar way to the way that we did it before. So there are 7 sessions that we will be running. Those dates are going to be released shortly, but I say very similar to what we did last time. So all things being equal, we are looking to do our regulation consultation in the summer, where we will take into account all the comments that have come forward from Reg 18. We will have selected the sites from the candidate sites that we're going to show everybody during the Reg 18 one, and then we're going to submit by the end of the year. So a lot of hard work's gone on by the team, but I'm confident that we will make these remaining deadlines. Now, South West Herts Joint Strategic Plan. Because of local government reorganisation, the JSP has been dissolved, along with the one for central and eastern Hertfordshire. The plan is that there will be a countrywide strategic plan. Since amending this slide, I have been party to a timetable for how the Hertfordshire one will actually work. That has not been obviously approved yet, but we've got an idea about how it will work and it will go forward, and that is information that we can pass on when it's more fully dealt with. Neighbourhood plans, I kind of mentioned.
Sorry, can I just ask about the JSP, because I was involved in the start of it many years ago. So it's been completely abandoned, has it? All the work and everything?
Oh no, the work. No, it's the two JSPs have been disbanded in terms of future work, but all the work that's been done up till now will feed in to the bigger plan.
So this bigger JSP is going to be county-wide, not based on the unitaries then?
No, it's going to be county-wide. So it's going back to the old structure plans, effectively.
Okay. Good.
Neighbourhood plans, I've kind of basically mentioned the Hertsmere and Borough Council Town Council one, so they've finally got that in, so that's going to be extremely interesting to read. Literally only received it today, so I haven't had a chance to look at it, but it's going to be extremely interesting, and officers will be reviewing it. Section 106 agreements, basically planning obligations, so we use them to our fullest ability to get positive things for the borough in terms of each of the planning applications that are determined. Some of the things are set by county, things like public transport, although we do specify what we would like to see in terms of that public transport. Highways, school provision, and county basically hold the money. Community infrastructure levy. We inherited a large quantity of money, and we revised how we were going to deal with applications to make it more flexible for local organisations. That is now fully in swing. 15% goes to town and parish councils in the form of neighbourhood CIL, and it gets to 25% if they've got neighbourhood plans, which is a really good incentive to have a neighbourhood plan. So if the Hertsmere and Borough plan is successfully approved, then their NCL contribution will raise by 10%, which I think they'll find extremely helpful. I suppose that the one downside about collecting SIL is that it only comes into us once the development has started. Now, what of course we've got at the moment are a lot of planning approvals, but a lot of applications where work has not commenced. So we probably won't see such a huge sum of money collected in the forthcoming municipal year. So in terms of awards, these are the ones for the last municipal year. You'll see that actually some of these are quite substantial, that you may have questions that you want to ask about these, but the details on all of these are obviously within both Cabinet and Council papers. Some of these have still got to come to Council, but they are going through the system. And I've also included a couple of the NCIL bids as well. I think that is it. So if there are any questions about any of this or any wider questions on issues that I haven't covered, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Oakley. I see Councillor Butler, Councillor Sussman and Councillor Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things, similar to what I said to the housing team there. The S106 money, I appreciate you, like you said, it's held by Hertfordshire County Council. It would be nice to have a little bit more detail. We've all been here long enough to know how that works, but it would be nice to know how much money is in the pot, how much money hasn't been spent, how much money has been spent. Give a little bit more detail in the next presentation. Don't necessarily need it today, but stuff like that would be handy, because then we can actually question it and quiz it and look into it. Enforcement and building control, I must admit, I think that's the only side that's letting the department down. I'm not satisfied with enforcement. I think it's really poor at the moment. I've certainly seen things where we should be certainly on top of our game, and on that side of things, it is the one side where I think we need to really look into and see what we can do to better it. Building control, I can give you an example. You only have to look at the building down next to the pub, the Alfred Arms in Bournemouth High Street, and look at how that's being built. I wouldn't move a cat into that. I'm sorry, it's dangerous. That thing needs ripping down and starting again. And how that's being passed, I don't know. How you've got people living in there, I don't know. So those two sides I am concerned about, that we need to definitely look into and see how we can improve it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
As far as Section 106 funds are concerned, County holds a spreadsheet, and it is done by application, by amount, and the money is kind of drawn down. But I understand from Liz that they are going through everything, because I do know that actually trying to extract Section 106 money for a worthy cause can be rather difficult. And so I'd like to be clear about what's what and what's been spent, and also we have to be mindful. I'm not going to mention which county council department this is. Kind of generalises the pot that can be used and where it's used, and we have to be really careful that it's used here and that our Section 106 money doesn't disappear off to another local authority, however deserving it may appear to be. In terms of enforcement and building control, if there are specific enforcement cases you're concerned about, if you could let me know about those, and I'll follow it up. As far as building control is concerned, regrettably, building control is not part of this local authority. We partly own, if that's the right word, Hertfordshire Building Control, and my views on their ability to control buildings probably isn't very repeatable in the chamber. But I take your point on that building next to the Alfred Arms. Yeah.
Can I just challenge that a little bit then? So how can we, as an authority, push back on that building control? Because I must admit, if you're just looking at it the same way I am, I wouldn't even put our homeless people in there. I'd rather keep them in temporary accommodation or to give them a tent. That's how bad that building is. And I think we as an authority have a duty to actually do something about it. That's on our doorstep. And it's a dangerous building. And if no one's gone and seen it, I recommend you go and have a look at it. Because if I worked on a building site like that when I used to be an electrician, trust me, I'd been kicked off. I would have been kicked off that site and stripped of my NIC.
If I had my way, building control would be brought back in-house.
Absolutely.
But there is a wider question which Councillor Butler says, and this is what I'm being asked. It's been built. And they blame us as the council, for allowing it to be built in such a poor way. I mean, it is an embarrassment, and you can see there's poor standards. What can we do? Do we have any powers now once it's been built?
Not really, unless Liz can. I mean, this is the problem about having things like building control at arm's length.
It's ridiculous.
It's not something I approve of, and I don't want to point fingers, but I think it probably happened during your administration. I'm not sure of that, but I suspect it might have done. Mm.
Thank you. It was very heartening to hear you say, Councillor Oakley, that you're looking to do as much development on brownfield in order to save the green belt as much as possible. Recently, there was a motion put forward in North Hertfordshire about the concern of the rise of speculative applications in the countryside and about firming up the definition of sort of grey belt, trying to utilise more brown belt. If that came to our council, would you support that?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch what it is you're asking me whether I would support.
Okay, a motion whereby looking to firm up the definition of a grey belt with the aim of protecting as much they wanted to protect as much of their green belt as possible. Would you support that?
I support retaining as much green belt as we possibly can, but without actually seeing what their motion is, I can't be specific on that. But I think you know where I stand on green belt, hence the regeneration strategy.
Quick question, if I may, please, on SIL as well. On that list of those 6 that you posted, do all of them, have they all match funded? And actually one that wasn't on there, Boreham Wood Football Club, if that sits in Boreham Wood Town Council, did that come out of their SIL fund or our SIL fund? Thank you.
I removed the requirement for match funding as part of the revised approach because I felt that for small community groups, the chances of them actually being able to secure match funding was going to be quite remote, and I actually felt there were a lot of small community projects that would benefit from SIL but wouldn't have a cat's hell chance of doing it from match funding. What we have now seen, though, is quite a large number of quite heavyweight applications. Some of these, I wouldn't use the term match funding, but some of them have secured funds from alternative sources or have made a contribution themselves, but match funding is not the right term. In terms of Boreham Wood Football Club, they again have secured some funding, but I wouldn't describe it specifically as match funding.
But my question was, with that one actually, was did that come under the town, like, for where it sits, does it effectively come under, it's part of the Boreham Wood Town Council area, locationally? Therefore, did the monies come from us at Hertsmere, or did they come from their sill pot, the Town Council?
Well, nothing, that sill bid has not been determined yet. But it's a bid for strategic sill, which means it comes to the borough. Without going into the kind of the ins and outs of the bid itself, it's not something that would be regarded as neighbourhood sill, which would go to the town council. It goes way beyond that.
So have they not already had? I thought we'd done a successful application. No, okay.
It's been to the committee. There's further information required, and then it is planned to go to the next SIL committee, and then if it's passed, to go to
But location-wise, it sort of sits in the area of Boreham Wood Town Council.
Well, it's within the boundary of Elstree and Boreham Wood Town Council, but that is not the criteria for determining whether something should be NSIL or strategic SIL.
Yeah, it's a strategic SIL bid. It wouldn't go to the parish town council. They have asked the parish and town council if they want to contribute some of the funds, but it's such a large bid anyway, the town council would never be able to fund a project from their SIL, and it wouldn't go ahead otherwise, so it's important. And on that bid, just to make it complete, they're only asking for, I mean, it is a large amount, but the club themselves will be putting in much, much more than they're asking for. Councillor Allen. Sorry, it says Councillor Green, and then Councillor Allen, then Councillor Sullivan.
You've got one job,
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make a comment actually about what Councillor Butler was saying about enforcement, is that I sometimes worry that we don't have enough sort of oomph when it comes to it. So when people say to me, oh, there's someone, you know, ripping apart a house in my road, and they're building an extension, and they're doing all this, that and the other, and there's no planning permission, and I tell enforcement, and they go, oh, what a shame, sort of thing. Now, I'm sure that's not what really they're saying, but that's kind of the impression I get. And of course, people have to appreciate that you can only enforce something once it's happened. So I also get complaints, oh, I think my next door neighbour is going to do X, Y, Z, can you stop them? Well, no, you can't stop someone doing something if they've not done it yet. You have to then enforce something when it's happened to say, you built this, you shouldn't have done. But I don't think we're very good at that. You know, I do hear, obviously people grumble, but people do say, oh, look, there's such and such developing going on, possibly HMOs, possibly not. No planning permission whatsoever. So I write and say, look, and it's like, oh yeah, and not much happens. So is there anything we can do to give the enforcement team a bit more oomph? Because obviously you're not, once you've built all these things, you're not going to turn around and tell the people to make it into a 3-bed semi again, aren't you?
I think...
So, anyway, there you are, that's my comment and question.
Think, some of the reorganisation will have given them some oomph, would be the first thing I would say. The second thing is that no enforcement team in any local authority around the country has ever got enough resources. So I'd love to expand the resources, but I suspect I would get a good kicking for suggesting it. Do you want to add anything, Liz?
I wouldn't disagree, Councillor. But I think with enforcement, it is a very long-winded process as well. I think they do go out, there is oomph, they have to test the expediency of enforcement action, and that is quite a lengthy process. Then it often does result in, you know, if it's something that is acceptable, they will look to invite a planning application, and if not, they will consider what action is available. But obviously there is the option to appeal enforcement notices. it's easily delayed. If you know the system, it's an easily workable system. But we are doing everything we can to kind of push forward the teeth, because that is where we demonstrate to the public that if people are breaching rules and flouting them, we do have teeth and we do take action, and we've got quite a long list of actions, you know, that can be quite serious, and we can seek removal of buildings and putting things right that have been wronged as such.
So that's quite good to know that they've got teeth, and because I think with enforcement, it should be the stick, not the carrot. And I think that's important. I also would advise maybe, so the public see that we are doing something, maybe in Hertsmere News every year, a list of what actions we've taken, and I think that's important. But also a lot of the public think things aren't regular, but they actually are regularised, and in the end, you can build without planning permission, but then you have to put in, if it's enforcement, they can make you put an application. It doesn't mean it's wrong to build.
If I can, yeah, there is a lot that the public think does require planning permission that is permitted development, and that is a huge amount. Just to clarify in terms of the list, that is something else that Councillor Oakley and I have talked about, producing a list of sites where, not every enforcement site, because you'll appreciate we've got hundreds, where we're looking at, but there are obviously sites where we're actually taking action. We're looking at what we can do to kind of put that in the more public domain so members can see what we're doing and giving you that intel. So we're working through that between us. And
on sell, and which we've discussed before here, and over the last couple of years, the system has loosened up a lot in the right way. So applications are being successful, and things are getting built, and that money is being spent in very useful ways. However, it does seem to me that some things which would be really good to do, we can't do, because there are schemes which only this authority could do, and doesn't have the resources or staff. A classic example in Bushy would be the Moatfield Park, where we've talked about a SIL bid and a scheme to upgrade it, and the money is there. The NSIL would pay for it, but there is no one to actually do it. No one other than this authority could ever do that project. That's just one example. But could we not take another look at whether SIL can be used to pay for staff to expedite these projects?
We're only permitted to use 5% of the annual SIL income on administration. And with the number of applications, the bid applications we've actually got, we struggle to determine that. If you're actually saying, can we then provide people paid by the 5% in order to prepare something for, say, Moatfield, I think that's it's unlikely. The money isn't there. It needs to affect. As far as Moatfield is concerned, if you want to make a bid, that scheme and that bid has got to be done by Street Scene.
But it doesn't work, though. I mean, for example, Bushy NSIL, in the 3 years I've been a councillor, I think £40,000 has been granted out of 1.5 million. It doesn't work. There has to be a better solution.
One of the problems is that community groups that have been approached and suggested that their work would be far better if they put in a bid are not prepared to do the legwork to do it. Moatfield Park, I mean, there is a Friends of Moatfield. They probably need to work with parks in order to secure something. And that's really how it's going to work. There is not a resource in the planning department to do that, nor really a planning policy, the right people to be doing it, unless Liz tells me otherwise.
I don't think we should get into detail of the applications. It's something to take outside. But if it's a strategic silly, I know you talk about
it was an example.
Yeah, example, exactly. Councillor Sullivan, then Councillor Butler, you can get your words in after that.
Thank you. My question is about enforcement as well, and I know it's a huge frustration for residents where some people, some applicants have gone for retrospective, so they've built it, they've put in retrospective planning application that maybe wouldn't have been approved if it was put in as a full application in the process, and it seems to be sometimes that they're asking for forgiveness and not permission, because actually if we want to maintain the characters of our streets, and I know myself, I've had extensions on my properties and I've gone through the whole process and engaged with officers and made sure that the aesthetics are right and the measurements are right, but some people will just build it and then kind of put in for retrospective later. So I know that's a huge concern for residents, and actually what our powers are enforcement-wise, because a lot of the kind of covering letters I see in the planning statements when these applications go in retrospective is, well, you kind of can't do anything even if you don't grant it to us because it's going to remain, and it's really frustrating.
Liz will answer that one, I think.
Just to offer assurances to you that whether it's retrospective or not, they're tested by the same policy. So it's completely at the risk of someone if they wish to build something without planning permission and come back retrospectively. If it isn't acceptable, we will take the appropriate enforcement action. So it's tested by the same policy. So I'd like you to reassure your residents on those concerns that it is at risk, and we will have the teeth to pursue it if it isn't acceptable, and we have done that. And it will be their responsibility to, well, they have the option to appeal that enforcement notice to the inspectorate. We've had examples where that's been upheld and they've had to remedy that situation and put it right at their cost.
I think against that as well, we have to realise that because the governments are saying there's a national housing shortage and want to encourage development, planning policy is now getting weaker. And you're allowed to do a lot more without planning permission, and you're going to be allowed to do a lot more in the future as well, developments, because they need to build homes. So, and that's what the public don't realise. It's not like it used to be where there were strict rules. Now you can put an extension on the ground floor from up to a few metres. So it is, I think the public don't realise that is the actual policy now. Councillor Butler, did you want to say a few words?
Yeah. About enforcement, it keeps coming up, obviously. We talk about teeth. I think they need to go see a dentist then, because I'm sorry, they're not good enough. I'm looking at the town council and how we communicate with the enforcement team about a fence and a private property encroaching in allotment land. To change allotment land over to recreational land, you need a Secretary of State approval. Even I know that. But all we were looking for was reassurance from the enforcement team that we're allowed to put our fence back up. This is a good example, and we got no response. So they don't want to take the lead on this, and I just think that whole department needs looking at. I don't know what's happened in recent months. Maybe something has changed. I don't know, and I'm happy for my team at the town council to send this information over. But all we want to do is put a fence back up to reclaim allotment land, which has been turned into someone's private garden. And that's an example, and you're saying you've got teeth to do things. Well, this has been going on for months, if not years.
Hopefully Liz will take that back. I think there is a problem though, because I think, maybe I'm wrong, but the number of enforcement cases are going up. I presume the number of inquiries the team gets. I know they are overstretched.
We do have a very large number, and I think we touched on it earlier. It is a lot of misunderstanding, rightly so, that people don't understand what is permitted development and what isn't. So the vast majority of the enforcement complaints we get, and they all have to go out and be investigated, are matters that are actually permitted development, but they do take up time. But the numbers are going up, but we are closing as well.
Yeah. Very interesting discussion. Can I thank Councillor Oakley, Cabinet Member for Planning, Economic Development and Sustainability for this evening, and also, of course, Liz Baton, our Head of Planning, Economic Development and Sustainability. And thank you, members, for your questions as well. I'm sure there'll be many more coming up and many opportunities at future council meetings as well. Item 9, any other business? There is none. Now, agenda item 10, our future meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for the 4th of June 2026. But we do not know who will be in that group, because that will be after the AGM. So if any of you are not on our committee going into the next municipal year, can I thank you very much for your contributions. What I am saying is I hope to see you all back next municipal year for our meeting on the 4th of June. And thank you very much. And the meeting is closed at 9:08.